Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, "Cheating Girlfriend Stole My Life Savings and Called Police on Me to Ruin Me." I was dating a girl for a while that I really thought was going to be the one I get married to someday. We were living together and even had a joint bank account where we were putting in savings towards moving from our apartment into a house. What I didn't know is for the last 6 months of our relationship she was cheating on me with another guy. I was heartbroken and furious when I found out, but she didn't even seem to care. She didn't apologize and instead told me that if I was doing everything for her, she wouldn't have needed anybody else. As you can imagine, we broke up and I was left trying to emotionally deal with all of this. By the time I remembered about the joint, it was too late and she had emptied the entire thing. Not just the part of the money that was hers but also mine, which was my entire life savings I had. I was essentially broke and only had enough in my personal bank account to get me by paycheck to paycheck. I was in a horrible situation and after feeling bad for myself I tried to get my money back from her. I called her and told her that she shouldn't steal from me and to give me back the portion of the savings that was mine. She laughed in my face before hanging up the phone. I called again and left a message telling her that I needed the money back. Well, she ended up calling the police on me with some phony story that I had went over to her new house and started threatening to beat her and her new boyfriend up if they didn't pay me off. I was arrested because they believed her and was stuck in jail until the entire matter got cleared up. This woman that I had spent so much time loving and thinking I was going to marry not only stole everything from me but called the police to have me wrongly arrested. I figured that if she wasn't going to play nice then I could get just as dirty as she could. I knew that the money was probably long gone because I started seeing her post on social media fancy new handbags and designer clothing that I know she could never normally afford. While she did work, she had a tendency to get fired, be unemployed on benefits until they ran out, then get a new job. I decided that I was going to destroy her after what she had done to me. I could live with the cheating and lies once I had time to properly heal. Stealing my money and making me spend a night in jail though was over the line. Another thing that my ex tended to do was buy things on credit. I don't really believe in buying things you can't fully afford unless it's like a car or house or something that a loan is basically required if you aren't rich. Before I met her though, she had a tendency to run up credit cards and not be able to pay them back. When that happens, the banks tend to go to a collection agency who are in charge of getting the money from you. They call and send letters and become the most annoying thing in the world. I learned all of this one day after we broke up when I picked up the phone to what I thought was a spam call, but listened closer. Collection. We are trying to reach X to talk to her about the money that she owes me. This is her friend. Can I inquire to the debt amount and payment information? I knew that if I asked this, I would get them talking instead, and it worked. They told me how she owed $20,000 from unpaid credit card debt. Of course, I was going to be an amazing friend and help her out when it came to getting that paid. Me. The thing is, she used to live here but now she moved out and has a different number. I can give you that and her new forwarding address though, so she will be able to pay you off. She just got a new job that pays great and told me the first thing she wanted to do was pay off her debt. They believed me and I gave them her new address and her cell number. I know that she started getting a bunch of phone calls from them because I got a message on social media from her one day asking if I told her debtors where she lived. I didn't answer and let her get upset from the backlash that was now happening. She didn't have the money, and now that they had an address, they were sending letters talking about suing her since she hadn't been making any payments. The only reason I know this is she was posting pictures of the letters on social media asking people for donations or advice on how to get out of it. I read a long-winded post she made talking about how the courts were so mean and sided with the collection company that she had to pay the money back. Having something like this on her record plus not paying for so long probably plummeted her credit. I wouldn't be surprised if she was never able to borrow again, whether it be another credit card or a loan for a car. Then she started posting about selling the expensive items that she spent my life savings on and trying to get any kind of money to pay before she got arrested. She was saying that if she didn't sell it and get the money, they were going to come to her new place and start taking things to use towards the debt. She had the gall to call me and ask me to borrow money because she was in trouble. Apparently, the guy she had been seeing behind my back left her once he realized that she was in so much financial trouble. I asked her if she remembered when I asked her to give me back my life savings and what her reaction was. She didn't answer, so I just laughed in her face like she had to me and hung up on her. She pretty much lost everything, and the last I heard she was asking friends if she could stay with them for a while because she no longer had a place to live. She tried to destroy my life, and in turn I went and destroyed hers. For those wondering why I didn't just try and sue her or whatever for the money, I found out I didn't have any leverage to do so. She took money from an account that had her name on it, which she had every right to do. I wasn't able to get a single penny of my money back, but I got my revenge and learned an important lesson. If I was ever going to get a joint bank account with somebody again, I wasn't going to throw my entire life savings in it. That would go into an account that only my name was on until I was married and the laws surrounding it were a little more stable to work with. Some might think what I did was a little bit harsh, but, in my defense, I didn't make her rack up that kind of debt to begin with. All I did was point the people she owed money to in the right direction and watch the fireworks unfold from behind my computer screen. If she didn't make a false claim to try and have me arrested, I might not have ever done that and instead told the person on the phone that she didn't live here anymore or ignore them completely. I hope she had fun with my money while it lasted before I went and destroyed her because of it. The next story is titled, "Let an Ex-Elected Official Call the Cops on Himself." Several years ago, I worked as an unarmed guard for a security company that was contracted to watch over a new construction site for a large wind farm. This area was hilly rural terrain with lots of wind, perfect for this kind of project, or so I was told by the many contractors on the project. It was also popular with hunters, both local and not. The possibility of bullet holes in equipment being the primary concern, followed by a long distance by theft. The property had an old dirt road running through it that had been previously open to anyone wanting to use it. This part becomes more important later. I had been working this site since they broke ground on construction and never had any issues until a roll of copper wire was stolen. Our company had assumed that anyone trying to do anything on the site would use the heavily improved road through the site. They were proven wrong when that spool went out the back road. The only other access road that met up behind the property was nearly impassable for anything but four-wheel drive trucks. So had been considered unimportant beforehand. Needless to say, we moved to 2 guards minimum overnight, one at the main entrance and one patrolling the site. The other change was that the company who owned the project decided to require every person entering the site to have a badge identifying them. Due to the popularity with hunters, it created some issues due to this road now being the smoothest and quickest way to the back side of the property. The hunters would come and go, but the people who owned cabins behind the property were more regularly seen throughout the year. It was one of these owners that became the biggest problem. He was proud to flaunt the office he had previously held and adamant that he had an easement to drive through this property to get to his. It may be different in other areas, but here an easement, ability to drive through someone else's property, is given if there is no alternative route available. With there being a road that led out to the public roads from the back of the property we were guarding, this wasn't the case here. The company we were contracted with was actually pretty reasonable, with allowing access, no money involved, and just some personal information, identification. For this particular individual that wasn't good enough. He made a routine of speeding past the guards and refusing to stop. So, a gate was installed and kept shut short of the construction crews starting and ending shifts. One of the other guards let us know that he was trying to get a ticket or get arrested so he could take the owner to court. My luck would have it that he chose one of my shifts to try to run the gate. This shift being a midday on a Sunday, with a crew having come in for overtime to fix something in one of the nacelles, the large box behind the blades, that had been flagged during testing and couldn't wait for repair. Honestly, not too sure what was going on with that end. With all of that in mind, this gentleman drives up and starts yelling about accessing his property. We have his picture, so I already knew who he was. I pretended to not hear him, clearly giving me enough time to start using the gate in front of him. This is not a fancy electric gate, it's a steel cattle gate that you have to walk open and closed. As I start shutting the gate, he starts driving forward, so I stop and stand in front of his truck and let the gate swing back open. He tells me to move out of his way, to which I responded that I know he won't risk running me over because he knows he would lose what he is trying to gain, free and unrestricted access through the property to his. Seeing that I have the advantage, he decides to try a different approach. He made a comment along the lines of just blocking the road until I let him through or call the cops. I bluffed a little in telling him about the crew working on site and said I wouldn't do anything about it, but since they were on overtime on a weekend I wouldn't stop them from doing whatever they needed to do to be able to go home. Which led to him pushing to get the police involved. Now is where we start to get into the mick. I was given explicit instructions not to call the police on him because all that was wanted was for him to come back during the week to get a pass. Which I told him repeatedly to no avail. He decided to keep pushing the police getting called, which I kind of started to find funny the more he talked about it. He went from simply saying I should call them to more in-depth pushing. He asked if we had a phone in the guard shack, which we didn't. He asked if I had a cell phone, which I lied and said I didn't, which was more believable considering they hadn't gotten very popular yet. He then said he did but didn't want to call 911 since it wasn't an emergency and asked if we had a phone book. Still not sure why we had one, but it was there. He even tried to get me to call the sheriff on him off of his own phone, which I again refused. Not ready to give up, he took it upon himself to call the sheriff's department on himself. Satisfied that the police were on their way, he moved his vehicle aside and allowed me to shut the gate. It was about 30 minutes before the first deputy arrived since it was a weekend and a remote part of the county they served. Being the security guard, they approached me first. I told them what had happened and that neither my company nor the property owner had an issue with him or what he was doing, as he was outside the gate and not blocking anything. The officer shook his head about this guy calling them in himself and walked over to talk to the ex-elected official. It's about this time that the crew that was working came down, asked what was going on and had a quick laugh before heading back home or wherever they were staying. In all, about 5 officers responded to this call and each one gets a laugh about getting a call like this one. It must have been a slow day for them to have so many show up for this joke call and then take another half hour to 45 minutes deciding how to handle it. In the end they gave him his ticket for falsely reporting a crime or something along those lines. To which I hear him yelling out his window as he drives off that he got his day in court. The officers who had yet to start leaving laughed and said, yeah, he will get his day in court, but it's not going to be the one he thinks he's getting. The last story is titled, We're Going to Court? Okay. The setting: United States, northern neck of Virginia. The situation: bought land and built a house on it. Back when my wife and I were much more newlywed than we are now, we hired ourselves an architect and went whole hog on having our cozy little dream home designed. While this was being done, we went shopping around for a parcel of land on which to have it built, which went quickly and easily, and we even got a pretty nice deal on a half-acre lot that was just far enough back in the sticks for us to be happy, but close enough to our jobs that it wasn't much a commute. Best part of all? No homeowners association. There wasn't any active back in that area because, point blank, it was full of poor people back there. Dirt poor country types and working poor wage slave types. We made very sure with our lawyer that no previous owner had ever had the title amended to allow for any HOA nonsense as well, because that's a thing some real estate developers like to do. They'll buy up a property, get the title amended to force the membership of that property into a local HOA, that they usually operate or are in cahoots with those that do, and then resell it with that as a new requirement for any prospective buyer to automatically agree to when they sign the title. Flash forward to August of 2019. COVID was just around the corner, but nobody knew that yet. Everything was that which passes for normal out in those parts, and my wife and I had since moved to a different location but retained that property as one of our various rentals. It was our dream home for several years and we loved that place. Moving was tough. It was a good neighborhood out there and folks were very welcoming. Then a company that's totally not named Ryan Homes or anything even slightly similar came in and spent some years buying everything up back there that got the market and pressuring folks into selling, which worked out for them only too well. And of course, they gentrified everything. For 3 years and some change, there was massive amounts of the old being torn down and hauled out and the new being built up and sold. The HOA was built right in, because of course it was. Folks with money enough to throw down on shittily built houses that looked nice from the front moved in 1 by 1 and 2 by 2. Property values in the area skyrocketed. Property taxes skyrocketed right along with them, and more of the less poor people were forced to sell because they got taxed out of their own homes. My wife and I knew what was coming from the get-go. We knew those dinguses from totally not Ryan Homes were going to come sniffing around our way, not to try to buy us out, but to see if they could finagle, schmooze or threaten us into joining the HOA they were installing. It was inevitable. Lots of information is public record. They knew we had money. They knew we were living below our means by 2 orders of magnitude. They knew we clearly meant to be exactly where we were because we sure didn't have to be. They knew they didn't have a snowflake's hope in hell of pricing us out on taxes, so they tried nagging us to death and coming right up to the line on harassment, always to talk to us about joining the HOA. They failed. They got told by one expensive lawyer to find something else to do before we all got super busy helping them find things to worry about. And so, they desisted for some years. Then my wife and I moved and got the property set up as a rental. Absolutely not. Ryan Holmes starts bothering our tenants there, both trying to get them to pressure us into putting the property into the HOA as well as getting our tenants riled up with the most outrageous lies about what could happen if we, the owners, don't protect our renters better. My wife and I were livid after hearing about this crap, and so we got a hold of Definitely Not Ryan Holmes to let them know that this was our formal request, that they stop bothering our tenants and that all further communications would be from our really expensive lawyer. They must have assumed we were bluffing, or maybe whoever was in charge of thinking that day didn't show up for work, because they just kept right on with their nonsense. It got so bad that they were even sending fake but convincing looking envelopes with eviction notice that, upon being opened, said, "Could be what you find in your mailbox one day," without our wondrous HOA, and containing information about the benefits of the HOA. We gathered it all up and got the tenants to talk to our lawyer and got the police involved to get the ball rolling on a harassment investigation. Another formal request to cease and desist was sent to Never Ryan Holmes by the very expensive lawyer, which they utterly ignored. I think their guy that's supposed to come to work and think about things quit a long time ago. Maybe he never told anyone. Maybe nobody noticed. Whatever the situation on their end, when my lawyer talked to their lawyer told my lawyer that their client was doing everything legally and that if we wanted to pursue the matter in court, that was what we'd have to do. So, we did. I'm not sure what kind of lawyer magic my lawyer and his fellow legal demons worked on this front, but we were in court for 1 single hour when my lawyer and their 4 lawyers and the judge had a private talk after the preliminary hearing. Half-hour later and the lawyers from maybe Ryan Holmes come back into the courtroom looking like a quartet of cats that had been pissed on. My lawyer takes a seat beside me and says, "They're going to settle." And I was like, I didn't think we were that far along into this yet. What happened? And he said, they built 51 homes in county of concern over 2 years. Every single one of them was inspected before close of sale by a real estate agent that never actually got around to getting her home inspector license. And that's how was it Ryan Holmes the whole time paid me 10 grand to not sue them while they got bent over by the county and the state and tag-teamed like the new boy with the pretty lips in a prison yard. TLDR. Housing developer harasses my wife and I. Then harasses our tenants after we leave and rent the property or, to try to make us join their creepy HOA. They make us take them to court to get anything done, at which point my lawyers let the judge know that everything the developer built in that area was unlawfully sold because the home inspector wasn't actually a home inspector and all the legal documents she signed off on during every closing on every one of those units in the whole county were invalid. Developer gets throat punched repeatedly by county and state for probably millions of dollars in fines and fees and settlements with homeowners that were sold properties that were never lawfully inspected before being turned over. I got 10 grand in the settlement, which my wife and I gave to the tenants in that property because they deserved it, and we really didn't need it anyway. Thank you for listening.